Hi everyone, this is Yonal versus Jacob. Let's get started. D4, okay, King's Indian defense. E3, King's Indian. It's a safe way to play, I guess. Playing Knight C3 and then E4 and getting a big center it probably puts black under more pressure, but it's still fine. It's not going to decide the game. D5, okay, so this turns into a Grunfeld of some sort. And I guess it makes sense since your opponent hasn't gone for e4. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about them taking and then playing e4 and having a big center because they're a whole tempo down because they've played e3 first. So yeah, I think that's a good decision by black. Knight f3, castles, bishop d2. What? I don't know. What about bishop d3 or bishop e2 or something, and then castling? I don't know what this bishop d2 move does. I mean, there are many situations where you want to play things like b3, bishop b2, and I kind of want to just leave that option available. Bishop d2 is just developing for the sake of developing. I mean, there might be variations coming up where black goes for c5 and takes on d4 and opens this line for you, and your bishop might be able to go from c1 out to g5 in one move. Playing bishop d2 right now just doesn't make sense. You might end up playing it 2 or 3 moves from now, but there are moves you definitely want to play. You definitely want this bishop either developed on either d3 or e2, and and you want a castle. So get those done first and see how the game progresses before deciding what to do with this bishop. The bishop sitting on d2 interferes with the queen's defense of d4, which could be a problem if black starts putting pressure on this d4 square. C6 was played. Okay, it kind of justifies white's move. I'm not just looking at it. I mean, c5 does considering that this bishop's on d2 now, going for a quick c5 does seem very attractive to me. It looks like a really nice way to play. The idea is to try and take here and take advantage of the fact that the bishop's interfering with the queen. C6 was played. It's just solid stuff. C takes d5, knight takes. I don't know, I want to just chuck a pawn in the center. Taking with a knight seems a little bit risky. I mean, your opponent can go for an e5 push now, hitting your knight. You're giving up the center. That's the problem. I'm not sure why you'd choose to take with the knight rather than taking with the pawn. You take with the pawn, and your knight then has a c6 square, and then this pawn on d5 supports a knight jumping into e4. It's just, it doesn't. I'm not sure why you would make this decision. It didn't really matter because white took, but black then chose to take back with the queen. Doesn't want to put pawns in the center for some reason. I'm not sure why. I think taking with the pawn is better. I mean, it opens the c-file, which means the game will become a fight over the c-file, and white gets first dibs on the c-file. But it shouldn't make a difference. It's not just going to jump in c6 and block the c-file. Maybe he was thinking he wanted to get c5 in and use this fianchettoed bishop to put as much pressure on d4 as possible. Maybe that was his thinking. I don't know, the queen just looks a little bit exposed there. And I'd be a bit concerned about, a rook coming to c1 with the idea of the bishop jumping out to c4. I mean, it's not really a problem. This queen's going to steal the a pawn. Well, I mean, what about b3 with the idea of the bishop coming to c4? The b3 pins this pawn and runs into moves like c5, but black doesn't really have the development to open the position up, so I think white's got time. So I'm just looking at the engine now, and a move like rook c1 is suggested. This queen running into a2 is a huge blunder according to the engine because of bishop c4. And this is dicey stuff. It requires quite a bit of proper calculation, but it turns out that this queen is trapped. So like queen back here, and then you've got bishop b4, and the queen is done. So yeah, rook c1 could be played. You do have to be you have to be on the lookout for stuff like this. I mean, if you can get rook c1 in straight away, so that you can bang off bishop c4 and hit the queen and develop your bishop with tempo, allowing you to castle, you do it. And in a case like this, when you've got a queen running in the corner, you do have to calculate it out and see if you can find a way to trap that queen. So that requires quite a bit of work. But yeah, if you put in the work, suddenly white gets an amazing position. A lot of players with black would, especially if you just had a long think, they'll just trust your think and they'll go, okay, I can't steal that pawn because he's worked it all out and knows that he's going to trap my queen, and he won't take it anyway. But yeah, that's a pretty cool line there. That's pretty nifty. But yeah, you got to work it out. Okay, let's go back. So yeah, rook c1 was the opportunity here. That was missed, and instead bishop d3 was played. The queen is on the central square. You desperately do want to play this. Maybe he was thinking he wants to go e4 and gain a tempo that way. Maybe that was the thinking. c5 was played now. Yeah, so e4 is the major issue here. Can e4 be played? And yeah, it looks like the answer is yes. But I mean, there is this thing that the pawn can't jump up to d5 afterwards because the bishop is pinning it to the b pawn. Interesting. So what was actually played here? After c5, the engine is suggesting queen c2 or castles, just ignoring the fact this pawn is here. Even rook ac1 is considered a move. That looks like quite a nice attacking move because you're threatening to just take the pawn, forcing him to trade off those pawns in the center. Once again, you got to worry about the queen stealing this pawn, but yeah, I don't think it's too big a worry. White's pieces are just fully developed and way too active for black to be stealing pawns. I can't imagine that he could get away with it. I think white would have some forcing lines that win the game, win material. So white's now gone and played bishop e2. What? No, just no. The bishop's already developed. Why are you retreating it? You know, castle's much better. Queen c2 is much better. Rook c1 is much better. Even queen b3 is much better. It just looks like he wants to take this pawn and he can't because the bishop's pinned. So he's played bishop here, unpinning the pawn. But I mean, why do it that way? Why not like bishop c3 or something like that? And then your queen's defending your bishop this way, and the bishop's not on a stupid square anymore. It's actually threatening to challenge this fianchetto bishop on g7. There's so many ways that white can play this that are quite reasonable. Bishop e2 is not one of them. That just throws away an entire move and justifies black's entire setup. So black's position's looking quite great now. I really like this, particularly taking straight away and giving him the isolated pawn, and then knight here, and then hitting the isolated pawn, and just keep smashing it again and again and again. You've got rook coming across. So maybe you want to develop the bishop first, either here or there or something. But develop the bishop first and then use this rook. So it's hard to tell sometimes whether you want rooks on c8 and d8 or e8 and d8. Because if you've got on e8, you've got this thrust e5, which puts even more pressure on the center. Whereas if you go for c8 and d8, you've got the rook ready on the open file, ready to run down and infiltrate. But yeah, that's definitely how I would play it, be looking to play this position. But instead, black chose c4. And I'm having trouble with this one. I mean, yeah, black now has, effectively a queenside pawn majority with the potential to turn that into a passed pawn. But with this wall of pawns in the center blocking your bishop off, your bishop can't participate in this whole game plan of queenside pawn majority. And you're just not developed over there either. It's going to take you ages to get your rooks in position ready to push this majority. This pawn will probably just get lost before you get a chance to do anything with it. I mean, things like b5, for instance, can be answered by a4, and you can't answer with a6 because the rook is going to be pinning the a pawn to the other rook. And you're going to end up with isolated pawns. This pawn's going to end up isolated and in a lot of trouble. Just the immediate rook c1 or queen c2 hitting this pawn is quite difficult to deal with. In fact, that's exactly what white did, queen c2. I think that's a really good move. You're threatening to just take a pawn, and how does black defend it? He's going to have to do something like bishop e6 or something to keep it safe. He's gone for b5, but yeah, a4 looks quite strong. b3 also puts a few gives black quite a few problems because it pretty much forces a swap off of pawns and opens up the a file for this rook to hit here. And this a pawn could become very weak. If I just show you takes, this pawn is a problem. It's going to be a massive problem. It can't go to a5 with the bishop guarding that square. And yeah, maybe bishop, maybe knight c6. I don't know. It's looking pretty dicey. So I'm just quickly analyzing a few lines, trying to work out how white should play this. Okay, so I won't bother putting that up. I want to get to what actually happened. A4 is what was played, and this is dangerous. Like A6 isn't a possibility because he just takes it. Bishop F5 though, however, complicates things as well. One reason why I suggested Rook C1 before Queen C2 earlier when we got to that position when Queen C2 was played was because the Queen is vulnerable on this diagonal here. And Bishop F5 would definitely have to be the way to play this now. That Queen now has a very uncomfortable decision to make. C3 looks pretty dicey, but maybe it's okay. D1 doesn't achieve much. It might be the best move, but C3 seems like the way to play this. The engine's now saying A6, but can't you just take here? Oh, the queen. Yeah, the queen will be defending the rook. Okay, I get it. So that pin that I talked about earlier actually was never a problem. My mistake, blind spot. At the moment, the queen isn't defending the rook because the pawn's in the way, but after b5, a6, the queen will be defending the rook. So it does look like black can actually get away with this whole a6 move here. So back here, after a4, he went a6, which I thought was impossible, but no, it's not. The queen defends the rook. Okay, that changes my evaluation of the entire position. C4 looks like black can get away with it. I thought it was just a huge blunder. But yeah, white can't go A4 and use that pin because the queen's defending the rook. Okay, so well done to black. However, I still don't like this move. I mean, a move like B3 kind of just upsets that entire plan altogether. So Queen C2 was played, and B5 was played. Now B3, yeah, like I talked about it. Okay, I'm going to move on. A4, A6, and now knight H4. What? Why? I mean, okay, is it just simply this? One move threat. I'm going to play bishop there and win your rook. But yeah, knight on the rim is dim, I think the phrase is. I wouldn't be sending this knight out to here. I mean, this is just very easily stopped. I mean, you could just simply play bishop b7 and just answer bishop f3 by just retreating the queen, and there's no actual tactic there. You play a move which puts your knight in a really silly spot, and your opponent responds by developing a piece and playing a developing move he wants to play anyway. So after knight here, the queen ran over to g5. No, bishop b7 has to be it. Bishop b7 looks good. Looks really, really good to me. I really like that move there. Queen g5. I mean, it hits the knight, I guess. I mean, g3 is the natural sort of response here. It runs into bishop b7, which is going to be answered by castling. But yeah, there's another option the engine's pointing at. It's saying we should just play queen e4. Sometimes you can just play knight back, and queen g2 is often not a good idea because you develop your opponent's rook for him. In this case, the queen ends up trapped out of play, and a move like this is a bit annoying to deal with because, yeah, after this, you've got that. The rook is no longer defended. You just take on b5. Okay, here's complicated. Another option is, yeah, queen e4. This is the engine move. Defends the knight and threatens the rook at the same time. And rook a7 is, I assume, just answered by taking here. Though black can complicate things by chucking this move in. And yeah, you've got these swap offs, and what now? Oh, this pawn falls. Ah, this is a mess. Mess. Okay. So g3 was the choice that was made, which ran straight into bishop b7, and then white played bishop f3. Castling looks fine to me. I know you've got these weak squares amongst your king, but I don't see any way that that black can take advantage of it. There's just too much firepower defending those squares. Bishop f3 was the move that was chosen. But that runs into this. Takes, and then queen d5, pinning the knight to the rook. And yeah, I'm liking black's position now, because he gains that extra tempo. After like queen, well, I mean, there's this e4 move. That's actually an option as well. The engine suggests queen h5, hitting the knight again. Eventually, yeah, at the end of it all, this knight should develop, and black should have this majority on the queen side. And with this pawn now on e4, this bishop can actually help that majority. So instead of e4, maybe queen d1 is the way to answer that. What black needs to do here is find a way to bust open this line. He needs to get something like e5 in, so this bishop can actually participate in helping the majority, helping the pawn majority. First development needs to happen, of course. Something like knight here, and then trying to get e5 in and get this bishop into the action. So what was actually played? I'll just clean up the variation tree. So yeah, after knight bishop. So after bishop f3, this is exactly what happened. Well done to black. He found all these moves. Queen d1 was what was chosen, and now he's gone e5. He's trying to take advantage of the pinned knight. In fact, the knight's pinned to the rook. But this, yeah. I mean, how do you handle pawn takes? Was he just going to play bishop takes? Was that the idea? So I'm messed. This position's very complicated. It's hard to analyze it on the fly. I need to spend a lot of time looking at all these ideas. Queen d5, queen d1, e5. It's very hard to judge. Well, what's better? That's probably the better way to approach this. Probably developing. Just develop first. And get e5 in later. I think that would be the best way to handle this. I think he's throwing e5 in a move too early, and giving white a bit of a chance to get back into this game, because black is undeveloped. Bishop b4 hits the rook, and now the queen defends the d4 pawn. This is I mean, rook d8 though puts more firepower on the d file, but you can just trade here and yeah, offer the swap off of queens. But knight c6 gains the tempo on the bishop. After queen takes, rook takes, this pawn is going to fall, isn't it? The bishop can go and slot itself into d6, but that's just temporary. What about knight here? Bishop takes. This just trades everything off. Black, no, because after all this is, yeah, what is this? Probably an equal ending. Hey, this game's very long. I don't want to dwell on this too long. I've already been on this video for 19 minutes, so let's just see what happened. So white castled. So now e4 was played. The problem I have with e4 is, I mean, there's some great things about e4. Definitely, with having this dark squared bishop and having all these pawns stuck on dark squares like this, makes this bishop pretty bad for a long time. the game. And this king side is a little bit weak. If this knight decides to venture over to the queen side to deal with the majority, this king could find itself in a bit of trouble. Just h4, h5. Sorry, h5, h4, h3 sort of plan could be a problem. Once you've slammed a pawn in h3, there's a constant threat of mate on g2. You don't have to worry about the queen slotting its way in here. A knight finding its way into f3 or h3 can be devastating. So there's definitely some positives to doing this. The big negative, though, is this bishop not really being able to help your majority anymore. Taking, of course, opens that position up and makes this bishop a lot better. If he takes like this, then you can win this isolated pawn by just piling so much pressure on it, so many pieces on it that you're going to win it. If he takes with the knight, you could win the pawn straight away if you want to, but now with that pawn missing from d4, probably better just not to do it and just sit there with your queenside pawn majority and your fianchettoed bishop, and then run these pawns to the board, create a passed pawn, and you've got a really great endgame. So for example, if you were to play a few trade-offs like this and then slam the bishop into c3, you've got according to the engine, b4 is a thing, and it's true. I mean, if the bishop takes here, this bishop takes there, and this bishop's guiding the pawn all the way to the end, and white's in serious trouble trying to stop that pawn, blockade it, and prevent it from getting through. After b4, if he trades bishops off, that actually makes his defensive job a little bit easier, but you've still got this pawn majority. A passed pawn is coming very soon, and when it does, it's going to be hard for white to stop all this firepower. Once black's got white tied up, his king can enter the game, and then he can do some swap-offs at the right time and use his more active king to win the game. Or tie white up on the queen side and use the fact that he's tied up to launch another attack on the white king. So black has got many routes to victory in a position like this. Rather than just trading these off straight away and trying to win a pawn. This actually loses because after takes, you can't take back with your pawn because it's pinned. Okay, so where were we? Let's clean up this variation tree. e4 was played. That was what he chose. Knight went back to e1. Knight to c6. This majority is quite strong. 3 versus 2. Without the bishop, it's I don't know if it's going to be able to be enough to win the game though. E takes b5, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes. I don't know. I think those trades actually helped black quite a bit there, because now black has this open a file. His rook's ready to run down and infiltrate. I think you're really helping, and this bishop's going to reroute its way to here. I think white just sped up black's attack. I don't think trading's the way to do it. Maybe start trying to take advantage, trying to use these dark squares would be the way to do it. Something like knight c2. I mean, it leaves the king weak and exposed to a counterattack on this side, but it's still going to take a while for black to get some sort of attack going over there, which will allow white to jump into these holes and maybe put a stop to black's entire strategy. So knight c2, taking, I think, was not good. I think just this is, in this position, don't even trade the rooks here. Maybe knight c2 or something would be the way to do it. Make him take you, so you can take back with the queen. At least your queen has the a file then, and can infiltrate and do something over there. White helped black here, and then he goes knight g2. I mean, he's jumping for the f4 square. Maybe the only way, well, I don't know. The knight on f4, it looks strong, but it can get chased out of there pretty quickly with g5. And it doesn't actually help the fight on the queen side. Bishop h6 was played here. The engine's suggesting bishop h6, but I'm more inclined to like moves like b4 and just go straight forward with this majority. and just let the knight sit on f4 and just say, well, this knight's useless. It's not helping. The fight's over here. The passed pawns are coming pretty soon. The rook's going to be infiltrating, and this knight might be making its way into b3 or something, and this knight is not going to help in that fight at all. So yeah, I don't know. The engine likes bishop h6. Um, I kind of like the idea of just letting him play it. And b4 is great because it opens up the b5 square for the queen to run to. But I guess I can't argue with Stockfish, can I? So bishop there, f3 was now played. What? What? That's that's not very good. Yeah, this is quite bad. I mean, black can just take it, and I mean, what's the plan here? If the queen takes, for instance, you just take the queen, the rook takes, and then bang, give a pin. If he takes the rook straight away, yeah, I mean, can you still do this? The queen's overworked. It's trying to defend both the bishop and the rook at the same time. So this is just a basic deflection idea. First, you take the pawn, you sack the knight, but then you take the bishop to deflect the queen from the defense of the rook. If the queen takes the bishop, you grab the rook, and at the end of it all, you've won a pawn, and you still and this is isolated, that's isolated, and black's position is winning. I mean, you could just go b4 c3. Yeah, no, f3 was very, very bad for many reasons. After the pawn takes here on f3, he has to move his knight. He has to throw in like knight f4 or something. But black can just chop it off, and yeah, white's probably still going to win this, isn't he? But we can keep him occupied by playing moves like this. How does he defend this? Does he go bishop c1? I mean, we can probably just pin the bishop here now, and we got the same over. The queen is got me overworked as be defending the bishop and the rook, so we still can't grab this thing here because you just grab this and then grab the rook at the end of it all. So yeah, knight f4 kind of complicates things, but yeah, after f3, black should just take it. He didn't know. He grabbed this straight away. Does this still work? So he's played it in a different move order. If he takes here, I mean, the problem with this is there is an in-between move. He can throw this move in first, and after this, and takes here. I guess you've still got the queen fork at the end of it all, don't you? Okay, yeah. So f3, yeah. So where are we? So after f3, yeah, there's two things here. So it looks like black sacrificed with the idea of, at the end of it all, I'm going to queen fork and win the bishop here. But yeah, this one would have been even better, I think. Okay, so knight takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4. Can he, instead of taking back, the in-between move can be a little messy to deal with. Because after takes, f takes, what have we got? I guess we got that, don't we? It's pretty devastating. Instead of knight f4, what if we take here? It's just, I don't know, white just has a lot of in-between moves, a lot of options. According to the engine, none of them work, but by taking here first and not taking on f3, you're leaving yourself open to the fact that one of those options might actually be winning. Yeah, okay, so e take, whoops. So after knight takes, what happened? White took back and then black just went check. Yeah, good work for black seeing that tactic. The knight jumped into e3. That doesn't solve anything. Now you lose two pieces. You're just trading pieces. You're just trading them unnecessarily. It's hard to tell. Maybe this king should go here or something. But after knight to e3, bishop takes check, forcing bishop takes, and then queen takes. There are extra pieces just got traded off unnecessarily. move the king, and at least you've got the knight still. Bishop takes here. It's scary. These pawns are going to come crashing through. There's not much white can do about it. At least he's got his knight, and he can add some complexity to the position. The knight might be able to do some sort of trickiness. If he can find some way to maneuver his way to f6 or something, you might be able to get a counterattack with it. But just offering an extra trade-off like this just means the position's a very easy win for black. King g2, so the rook came down a2, that's great, just threatens to take it, and also you're pinning the pawn, so c3 means you're going to win it anyway. The queen came to b1, and yeah, there's a lot of different ways for black to win this. He just has to go queen b3 now, and this pawn, I mean, rook f2 doesn't actually help because you just take here. I guess the king goes to g1, but yeah, c3. And this pawn is pinned a million ways. It's a really easy win for black. So after queen b1, black took. That should be okay. Except after rook takes, you no longer have this move here. He played rook takes f3, but that just runs straight into queen d2 check. The rook comes to f2, trying to defend b3. Now, all that has to happen here is you just need to throw the check in, and the king has to go somewhere, g1, I guess. And yeah, I mean, queen a8 is awesome. That just threatens this, and the game's over. But even if you don't play queen a8, even if you just like retreat your rook back to a7, black is 2 pawns up with a queenside pawn majority, more active pieces, and a far more protected king. Easy win for black. But back in this position here, he tried to get clever and did something absolutely terrible. He played rook take a takes b2. All that hard work just thrown down the drain to a simple X-ray tactic. Yeah, the idea is you take my queen, I'm going to take your queen. Unfortunately, he missed this. Queen takes b2. The rook defends the queen through the queen. And now game over. That's it. He just lost the game in one move after all that hard work. So he goes queen d5 check, tries to keep the queens on the board to, to give himself the best possible chance of getting back into this game. He's still got 3 pawns for the rook, and this king is very exposed, so there is still potential to pull off a miracle. With best play, this is one for white, but black can make it very difficult for white. We can start off with a barrage of checks, just keep checking this king and hope for a draw by repetition. Force the king to go back somewhere it doesn't want to go. You're probably going to have to expose your own king if you want to have any chance of getting into this game. Something like f5 is probably necessary, just to maybe run the king into the center. These pawns can stay here for a while. Yeah, it's winning for white, but black can make it difficult. But in this position, he played h5. And you can see he's trying to like weave a mating net or something. He's trying to like go g5, g4 or something like that. Or maybe he wants the queen check to be answered by queen. If the king moves up, he wants to go queen g4. I'm not sure. It looks like he's trying to weave a mating net. I also create an extra escape square for his king. He ran into this here, which is threatening rook check followed by checkmate. So black must check here. But black can put up quite a sneaky, bunch of checks here. He can make it quite difficult for white. Queen here, check. King g1, and he can pawn fork. Not that it does anything, just answered by check, and then the queen moves. But he can do some sneaky things. However, he didn't throw this initial check in first. I think he went queen here, hoping for the pawn fork, and completely, unfortunately, missed this check. At this point, black resigned because there's nothing he can do to stop either checkmate or checkmate. Okay, so that's just an unfortunate result for black after winning the entire game, taking advantage of all white's mistakes and blunders, and definitely crunching his way through a lot of very difficult variations. He's managed to get to a winning position and thrown it all away with one tactical oversight. This one X-ray, trying to be too clever, I think, and missing a simple X-ray tactic. That's a shame. Well done for White for finding it, for seeing that, not just going, oh, I'm in trouble, moving his queen, and then letting Black trade everything off. So well done for White for finding that. Um, yeah, but yeah, it's a shame. I don't like seeing games end that way. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you learned something. I apologize for the umming and ahhing because this was a very complex position and very hard to get your head around when you're trying to analyze it on the fly. So thanks for listening. I'll talk to you all later.